sad.
Yeah.
We got through the entire class.
It's just, yeah. So, just to remind y'all, right? Everybody, no matter what grade you got, has to turn in a rewrite, right? Because that'll be graded as a separate thing. Cycle A1 papers should have been turned in by sometime earlier this week. And then cycle B and so on and so forth. It's all on Canvas, right? Let's see. There won't be rubrics for the next cycle papers. It'll just be our comments on the paper, right? So remember, keep your rubric around as a guide to sort of general rules, do's and do nots. But we won't be handing those out when we hand back future papers, right? Let's see. If you're citing the textbook, right? Yeah.
Just for future reference, how much was that paper of our grade again?
There we go.
Isn't the third one 15?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
I'm sent through the
The first one by our 10.
Oh, so we're a fit. Wait,
Yeah, it's not cumulative. So it's basically B grades two separate things. So if you're citing the textbook or the source book, you don't need to do a works cited page. Please don't waste your energy on doing that unless you are using a secondary or primary source outside of the source book and the textbook. Don't change your margins. Use Times New Roman, 12-point font, right? Don't double space your name and date block, right? Some people did this and used up valuable real estate. You don't have to do that, right? That should be single space, okay? And you're not going to extend your paper by doing the name block in double space. It's not going to gain you much if there's not substance there, so don't try it. All right. Thesis statement does not need to be its own paragraph, right? It should come at the end of your introductory paragraph. So you're setting the context, you're setting the scene, the issues at stake, and this is my intervention, right? So it should flow like that, and that should all be in that introductory paragraph, not outside, in a separate paragraph. Colloquialisms, conversational speech, use it very sparingly, right? If it somehow drives your point home, sure, right? But, you know, in general, don't do it, right? These are analytical papers, so to speak, not a blog post, so don't do that, right? It can be unnecessary and disrupt the flow of the argument or analysis, right? So, real quick, I wanted to show one of the videos from the YouTube playlist. I think gets you into the mindset of the regular Joe or Josephine, right? In antiquity and why they sort of, did all these things about demons and magic and whatnot. Very short video, so go ahead and put that up. And for some reason, the subtitles are in Spanish, so.
That's fine.
Yeah. So
You're not just turn them on.
I could, but I don't feel it. Sorry about that.
A few weeks ago, I visited the Archaeology Museum at the University of Pennsylvania to check out their exhibit, Magic in the Ancient World. When I say I'm writing a dissertation on the archaeology of magic, I usually get some pretty weird stares, so I wish I could point them to an exhibit like this to explain my research. In one short little hallway, you have artifacts like these amulets that Romans used to wear around their necks, or this collection of incantation bowls. These are found all over Syria and Mesopotamia and generally date between the 6th to 8th centuries CE. The practitioner would write an incantation in a spiral shape inside the bowl, and then place the bowl upside down in your house or doorway. The idea was to trap or neutralize a demon inside of it, kind of like catching a cockroach under a bowl. And these are just a few examples. Archaeologists have found tons of magical artifacts from Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Greco-Roman world of the Mediterranean. We like to think of the Greek and Roman civilizations as pristine societies of colonnaded temples and colosseums, but these are the public buildings of antiquity. That's like trying to understand American culture through our most impressive engineering feats of today. But what about your average Joe? The daily life of your typical Roman or Greek in antiquity wasn't necessarily visiting these temples and amphitheaters, but trying to cope with daily life, trying not to die of typhus or hoping your wife survives childbirth. And one way to do that, at least to a guy living before the scientific revolution, was to rely on these magical strategies. And this is what I like most about this exhibit, how it grounds these artifacts in the daily life of antiquity. Are you sick? Well, here's an amulet to help ward off sickness. Are you ticked off at your neighbor for stealing your shirt? Well, here's a lead curse tablet to help you with that. These are the mundane problems of people living in a pre-industrial society, and we often don't think about that when we step into a Greek history class reading Plato or Thucydides. Magical ritual was everywhere in the Greco-Roman world, and people from every social stratum turned to these rituals to help them through life. Yes, ancient law codes like the Theodosian Code technically outlawed magic, but archaeology shows that magical ritual continued unabated into late antiquity. Though these objects might strike us as weird, superstitious, or primitive to the modern eye, through them we encounter ancient ritual far removed from the rarefied rhetoric of guys like Plato or St. Paul. We see direct evidence of the fears, anxieties, and motivations that impelled the specific actions of ancient individuals. And despite the exotic nature of these rituals, the problems that they were trying to cope with, sickness, heartache, rivalries, these problems are just as prevalent today as they were 2,000 years ago. We have just found new ways to cope with them. If you're in Philadelphia, go check out this exhibit. It'll be there till September 2017, and it's a great firsthand experience.
So don't go to Philly expecting to find that exhibition. Because yeah, it's been done, but very good, very good. And the thing to take from that is that, right, these strategies, right, so magic, and including being practiced by Jews and Christians, right, are answering the same things that we today answer with things like, hey, let me go down to the hospital, let me go see my therapist, let me go, all these sorts of things that we have these different ways of handling and analyzing. They had what we consider magic, right? Yeah, let me switch that to screen 2. Yeah. And the other important thing to remember, what was it? My notes. I think that was it. Yeah, same needs, right? Same needs, these very human needs, different resources, right? We have professional, medical, and scientific resources to go to. They had recourse to holy men, demon catching bowls, and it just is not necessarily different level of intelligence or anything. These are the resources, these are the strategies they had, right? And the conceit was that these things are very real and very operative in the world, and that these are the ways you counter them, right? The problem of evil, right? As we'll talk about more with Augustine, all right? So the other quick thing I wanted to mention was that I have an episode of the Center for Pre-Modern Studies podcast. The Pre-Modern Podcast is what it's called if you look it up on Spotify or iTunes, right? interviewing Dr. Jennifer Alls Freeman of the art history department, and she's also at Union Theological Seminary, right? About the figure of the Good Shepherd, right? So the portrayal of Jesus as the Good Shepherd, which you might be familiar with, and taking it out of this sort of modern, born in the 19th century context of this very pastoral scene, relating to the chapter in John where Jesus is described as a good shepherd, and putting it in the late antique context of meaningful, divine, and sometimes imperial power, right, as portrayed. Most notably, we begin talking about in the mausoleum of Galla Placidia, which is done right in the same period, about 425, right? So check that out. That might, some of the information from that podcast could be included on something as a question. I mean, it's not right now, but I might sneak it in somewhere. Dr. Sturck allows it. But definitely check that out today or this weekend as it is out. All right. So what I want to do now is talk a little additionally about, as usual, I've included something extra, right? So if you go on Canvas, there'll be a letter a letter from Augustine to this military official, Boniface, right? So who is Boniface? So if I could move, yes, this is Boniface, right? So Boniface is a military official in 5th century Africa. At the time Augustine writes this letter to him, he's just a tribune, but eventually he becomes Count of Africa, which is basically the military governor of the whole African province. And let me
Did he become a pope as well?
no. So this Boniface is no relation to the Pope Boniface, who died shortly before, or the later 8th century saint that converted a bunch of Germany. Just a common Latin name. So these are his troops. This is the area he commanded. There's Hippo Regius, Augustine's seat, and of course Carthage right there, the capital of the this quarter of the empire, right? So in this letter, right, this sort of relates back to what Dr. Sturck was talking about on Monday, towards the end of the class, sort of Augustine in this pastoral role and in this role as sort of an advisor to all types of people, right? And at this time, Boniface was actually thinking of leaving his military position and becoming an ascetic, right? Which also shows how common these concerns were for people of all classes, all sorts of parts of society, right? Interestingly enough, what Augustine tells him is like, no, don't do that. We all have our purposes, just like, ascetics go out and fight demons in the desert. You fight the barbarian, right? And so this is your role, so to speak, in God's plan, right? So don't forsake that casually. Live by these values, definitely, but you have a role to play as a military official. Now, eventually, Augustine has to send him another letter in 427, and by this time, Boniface has come as domesticorum per Africum, so Count of Africa, right? And he has been drawn into the court politics of the wider Western empires, and in fact has to defeat several armies that are sent to Africa to sort of subdue him after he refuses a summons to Ravenna. And Augustine this time dresses him down. We won't read that one, but definitely look it up, because he's like, well, you have all these worldly friends and you have all this worldly power now, but you've forgotten the faith, right? You're allowing barbarians to come in and destroy the realm. You got all these greedy mercenaries serving you, a lot of them Goths, right? And you've forgotten that your duty, right, to basically protect the people and do good, right? And you'll see in this letter, this sort of presages, sort of the medieval conceit of those who fight, those who pray, those who farm, right? It's that same sort of idea. Everybody has their assigned role, and that is to the greater furtherance of the divine plan, right? So what I want you to do is take well, first what I want you to do is split into groups of 2 or 3, right? Read the letter to Boniface, right? I've highlighted some portions because I've used this in my own study, so if you want to use those as a reference, that's good. And then discuss this for 10 minutes and also bring in sort of what you read in Confessions and see what adheres, what aligns with that as well. So, groups of 2 or 3, read, discuss. Let's see. Yeah, how far along is everyone? Is anyone finished? Yeah, just go ahead and start discussing that. Confessions, I'll put up the letter, the questions for confessions here in a second. Yeah.
Interesting that he had quoted the Bible saying, well, yeah, that's right. So really interesting. Yeah. I think that you need to completely devote yourself to life. He presented maybe not even directly that is sort of like you have to give up everything. I mean, God, live that life. Essentially, no other profession. Enough. Good.
Now let's challenge.
Yes.
I just saw.
Yes, that's what this is about.
Yeah.
This lovely flowchart. So we didn't read any City of God, but he lays out fully in City of God, but you get a little sample of that in the letter to Boniface, right? These sorts of ideas. That's why I wanted to include that. All right. So that was a good question. So let's see, just to start off, so this lovely flowchart shows you the conceptual steps you're supposed to take from one of Augustine's later works, The City of God, very famous, very much still quoted and talked about. But you get a little sample of that in the letter to Boniface. But yeah, this is a great way to think about it. If you're thinking of planning a just war, follow these steps. Definitely would have helped back in 2002 or so. That's if somebody had given this flow chart to the Bush administration, and I voted for him, so yeah, it says a lot. Anyway, yeah, showing my age. So what of these ideas comes across? Basically, what's going on in the letter to Boniface? What do you take from it? Yes.
It's an idea that pops up in the book that like your skills are not your own skills, the gifts from God. He says like, I don't remember what he said, something about like your strength is a gift from God and you have to use it against enemies of God or something.
Exactly. So while a holy man's strength will be his ability to fight demons, right, and to sort of be this font of holiness, this example, this modern example of a martyr or Christ, a soldier can do the same by fulfilling his purpose, right, on this scale. So if you're out there, you're protecting Romans, you're killing barbarians, subjugating them, right? Then you're using your strength for the right purpose. You're protecting the people of God, right? You don't have to abandon that and go off and live in a monastery. Now, as Boniface Layer does, you suddenly use that strength, that power, and that influence to chase after worldly glory and these ranks in the imperial government. Then you're going towards the other end of the scale, right? What else? Yeah.
I mean, you kind of just said it with along with the gifts from God. It said like you must dedicate these gifts to God and make sure you don't follow like lust or something like that, so they don't get corrupted.
Yeah. So he's sort of saying, hey, even though you're not a monk, you can still sort of tap into these virtues. What are they? Oh, well, whatever you were going to say, and then that question is floating up.
Also from the letter from page 269, it says a line in a quote, "Wars wage for the purpose of securing peace." That for this God they're waging war. For this God they're waging battles and killing their enemies. All for their religion.
So the idea is not to fight with the intent to fight, right? This is one of his later criticisms of Boniface, that he's fighting in order to pay his troops, right? He's fighting in order to get these ranks, and that's to the wrong purpose. The purpose should be to establish peace. So if you have a group of barbarians out there, they're raiding, right? Well, you go in and you crush them, and you crush them with maximal severity, right? But then you've established peace for the province, right? In theory, right? And this goes back, Cicero wrote about this, so this even goes back to pre-Christian times, but then Augustine puts it in the context of service to protect the people of God. Somebody else had something? Yes.
Well, I was just gonna name the virtues, but I think I had something.
No, go ahead and do the virtues.
I'll start with that, yeah. So I think he specifically cites chastity, sobriety, and most importantly, almost moderation.
Exactly. Which, yes, which is very important. Like being able after, and this goes back also to pre-Christian times, you ever read the Gallic Wars, right? This is one of Caesar's things, like to show Julius Caesar, to show that, oh, well, you fought me hard. I had to kill a lot of you and burn down your villages. But now I am granting you favor. I am letting you live, and you can become resourceful members of the new Roman Gaul, right? So, yes, this is a concept that then is carried on and Christianized here by Augustine, right? So, any other comments on the letter to Boniface? Yes.
Well, I was sort of talking, and what I was essentially saying was that, we can't all sort of withdraw from the world, or we can't all provide religious counsel or guide. So everybody needs to serve a role in the world, and the best way to sort of to honor God is to sort of serve that role in moderation, basically.
Mm-hmm.
To not chase after or to not use it for your own personal glory or for your own satisfaction.
Exactly.
Or just
So-
for like simple desires.
So unlike a lot of the earlier people we read, right, Hippolytus, even Saint Anthony to some extent, right, there was this idea, right, of you have to live this certain specific way in order to get closer to God, right? Or else you're not fulfilling your potential as a Christian, right? Or an ascetic in the case of Anthony and Athanasius, right? Here, and this is the connective tissue to confessions, right? He's saying, okay, people are people, humans are humans, right? And we all have to go through this shit called life. So why, right? Why would we make that more difficult? Everybody has a purpose to serve. As long as you're tending towards this part, right, and not going down this way, right, and you acknowledge the grace that God has given you, right, in order to live and fulfill the greater good, right? As long as you do that, right, you're serving God's purpose. You're serving God's divine plan. You don't need to go out to the desert and eat salt and bread and wrestle demons. Okay? Very nice. That's a very, very good thing that got picked up. So now moving into discussion of confessions itself, and just real quick, right? First question deals with Manichaeism. As we talked about a little, right? Mani was born in what is today Fars in southern Iran, but what is definitely part of this frontier between the Iranian and Roman worlds. He might have been part of one of these Christian or Hebraic Christian communities as a young person, right? Which a lot of his influences come from. But in the end, his theology that is preserved in Eastern texts. So the text in the Roman Empire by decree of Diocletian, so this was even before he purged the Christians from the government, was that all Manichaean texts should be burned. And this gets repeated. Valentinian III and Pope Leo do this again in the 440s, because not only is it a weird Eastern faith, it also is too Persian, right? So even before Christians go in on Manichaeans, even pagan Romans are like, nah, we're not with this. But what Manichaeans preach, right, was the flesh is part of the evil God's realm, right? And so anything you could do to escape the flesh is good, because you want to liberate the soul, right? And go towards purity with a good God. They also associate the evil God with the God of the Old Testament, so Yahweh, right? So it's very much this conceit of denial of the flesh, which we've also seen some of with earlier Christian ascetics and writers, right? What Augustine is talking about is this: everything is good, right? All substances are good because they're created by God, right? And the further you go away from God, you go towards non-existence. Like anything that is purely evil cannot exist, because everything was created by God, right? But in the uncreated realm, the realm of the one, the good, right? Evil does not exist. It can't exist, right? In the presence of God, right? And then humans, of course, are in this middle strata, right? Now, some of the controversies we talked about before with two natures and substances revolve around where is Jesus, right? Like Arians say, well, Jesus is here, like he's slightly below, but he has a direct connection to God. Therefore, he is the Son of God, right? Now, of course, Augustine, being a Nicene, wouldn't agree with this. He would say this is the triune. Let's see. Yes, the triune God. So three persons. Oh, peace symbol. Nice. In one, right? So good. Theology. Done. All right. So questions. So Manichaeans. What does Augustine think of these guys and their dualism? He's shaking your head. What do you got? Yes. What doesn't he like about
Christians.
them? Exactly. What are these weird Persian views? You and then
So he specifically doesn't like mentions a couple of times that he doesn't like because there's an evil God, it kind of forgives you of your sins and doesn't make you take responsibility for them. And then he's also really against astrology.
yes.
Well, I was gonna say it sort of treats evil as almost on the level of good.
Yeah, because these are equal opposing forces, right? It isn't a matter of gradation or furthering away from God, right? It's a matter of these are the two forces in cosmic struggle. Yes.
He doesn't like them because he thinks they have really crappy arguments against Christian
Yeah.
beliefs.
If only you had better philosophers, Manichaeans. Yes.
Yeah, building off that, it's two gods. It's not one God.
Right. Which not only goes against Christian thought, it also goes against Platonic and Stoic thought, right? So basically, yeah, they don't have anyone on their side intellectually. Well, they have enough because obviously they're Manichaeans in the West until the late 5th century. But philosophically, in the world of ideas, yeah, they're sort of on their own with this dualist philosophy.
I think Augustine kind of agrees with the Manichaeans in the sort of dualism of the corporeal world, but at the same time, he seems to think that this incorporeal world is this realm of perfect perfection and goodness. That Manichaeans seem to think that it's more it reflects the dualism of life.
Yeah. And so it sort of goes to, yes, there is sort of a duality that we struggle in between, right? But it isn't this hard line, and we shouldn't be trying to escape life, right? Escape marrying, having children, sort of doing all these things, not eating. I think they were vegetarians, but don't quote me on that. I forgot whether that's true. Or like the highly ranked Manichaeans were basically like vegetarian, and they couldn't collect their own food, so somebody had to bring it to them and all this sort of thing. So crazy stuff. So, but Manny, in his mind, thought of himself as an apostle of Jesus Christ. Right? So it's an interesting thing. And later on, we will see Manichaeans in the East. Right? They remain a big presence in the East, even though Roman imperial government and the church go at them very hard and basically drive them out of the West, right? And we'll even see some sects later during the Middle Ages that sort of are recast as Manichaean in thought. So the Cathars in southern France, the Bogomils in the Balkans, but that's for the Middle Ages. We'll talk about that then. So, see what factors, teachings, people, sort of events move Augustine to this big moment in Book 8, Chapter 12. Yes.
Him beginning to teach at Milan and studying Ambrose, Bishop Ambrose.
Yes. Big, very important. Why is that so?
It's important because it's the first time he actually was like with an actual like bishop and actually listening to him. And instead of one thing that I know is instead of like him arguing with it in his mind, he was actually listening to the guy, kind of accepting his word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, not only because of his authority as a bishop, right? You could be a pretty lame bishop, but he was a very charismatic speaker, very charismatic writer, right? He's one of the first clergy to like dress down an emperor when the emperor Theodosius kills a bunch of people. He's like, "Hey, I'm not giving you communion. I'm not doing shit for you until you atone for shedding these innocent people's blood with your Gothic mercenary." So, and Theodosius does atone, right? So this is a big moment, right? And we'll see that sort of these instances or wants of these instances repeated later on in the semester, right? And Ambrose is so influential. I don't know if you read the part where his mother, right, has had this practice of taking wine and food to the graves of saints when she was in North Africa. And this was a tradition that was carried out in North Africa. But Ambrose was like, hey, don't be doing that stuff, right? Because number one, people use it as an excuse to go to the martyr's tomb and get drunk, and party, right? Although that could be seen as, sort of ritual in and of itself, but Ambrose didn't like it. And the other reason was that in order to commune with the saints, you don't have to bring them, a bowl of wine and bread, right? You can, pray. You can pray at the site. You can do all these other things. So that was Ambrose's case. And because he was so influential and he was such a powerful figure, basically a sort of a holy man in his own right, his mom agreed, right, and stopped doing it, right, from that time forward. So amazing figure. He was a bit anti-Semitic, so yeah, that there's that part, but yeah, that's so. There's I saw a manuscript picture the other day of him on a horse chasing. It's a medieval manuscript picture, but him chasing the Jews out of Milan. So yeah, it's one of them. But in this context, an interesting figure. Let's see, what else? What other things? Anything real quick? Yes. Yes. So his spiritual journey was not just his own. His friends were on that same journey, so that definitely played a role. What else? Yeah.
I think when he meets Ambrose, Ambrose like introduces to him like philosophical ideas about God that he never considered. Like Augustine talked about reading Aristotle and trying to use his theories of substance to try and understand God as an earthly substance.
Yeah, very important. And leading into that, what else, sir? And one of the other questions concerns this philosophical part. What else served as a sort of stepping stone or big influence? Yes. Yes, our favorite friends, the Neoplatonists. So, and I mean, this is a very Platonic framework, right? This is not, right? But this is, right? But imbued in the light of gaining Christian theology, right? So that was a big one, the books of the Platonists, right? Let's see, what else? I guess that probably covers everything. Victorinus was one of those people that played an important part. Let's see. So, what do you think of Augustine? Would you read, Confessions again? Will you keep this in your library, or are you going to throw it in the back of the closet somewhere? Yeah.
I mean, I'm a Catholic, so it's a very important text. I think that it provides a lot of insight into the development of Christianity up until that point, and provides a good framework and foundation of Christianity at large.
Yeah. Go ahead.
There's a part where he talks about his best friend dying, and I thought that part was pretty well written. That I don't know. I wanted.
Yeah, there are several instances where it's like there's a very modern, and I hate to use this for a pre-modern person, but there is sort of a modern sensibility about him. He's very emotional and intellectual responses that anybody can relate to, either 1,500 years ago or now. Yes. Oh, same. Okay. All right. Somebody different. I'll do you because you want to answer one time. Ellie.
Part of me would say, I just throw it out and say it was an accident. But this.
Okay, that's not the answer I wanted to hear.
No, but other part of me say that I would have to keep it because, in a sense, it does contain a form of historical document that eventually helps us understand not just Christianity in one area, but also others in general, in the form of preserving the idea of this Christian belief.
That's a better answer. So you're struggling, you're at agony within yourself, like Augustine. Like, should I throw this out? Should I not? This is a piece of wisdom. All right, somebody different. Okay, somebody different. Well, yes.
What I like about it is how it shows his journey to contrition. So it's fairly long, and he didn't just wake up one day. I'm gonna be such kind of he had a lot of agony about it. He had a lot of torment, a lot of thinking. So
Yes.
It's just a very description of his whole journey.
That is, and that's the amazing thing. And he shows his work too, of how he's thinking about this process, like what the struggle of what is evil, right? He shows the level of agonization that he goes through and the intellectual ferment he goes through. Yes, you, and then we're done. All right.
I mean, adding on to that, I think that's a really important part because I think a lot of people, especially now, this modern day, sure they may be raised Christian, but they don't really practice it at all until they're older in life because I guess you really just don't understand all those things in the Bible and you're really young, you're just oh yeah, Jesus and them.
Yeah, who's going to understand all this? It takes a mature mind to. Yes.
Well, I guess you do need to struggle through it, I think, essentially. But what I was trying to say is that Augustine wrote it for himself, I think, almost more than for other people, because he wanted, as he sort of entering into his bishopry, this was written early in his career.
Yeah.
He sort of wants to sort of lay out why he's here to himself, so that he can sort of gain self-knowledge and understand, why he's here, but also how he can use that to help other people, or how he can use that to be a wise leader.
That's an insight. Yeah. So it's almost a self-examination, a retrospective of his journey from literally a baby.
Why would you include the baby and not? That's what
right on.
You can't not do that.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. All right. If you have any questions, I'm available after class, via email, via Zoom, right? About anything, right? Do not hesitate. If you can't find something on Canvas,
being here.
If you anything, ask me anything.
You have...
See, and have a good weekend. Yeah.
I guess, well, it's not really something important to the class, but what was so Manichaean about the Cathars exactly?
So there was the idea that they had same dualist theology according to the Inquisitors, right? This sort of denial of the flesh. They also had the prohibition against marriage, right? And so those were the big things that led the Inquisitors to say, no, this is a new form of Manichaeism. Now, of course, these are churchmen in the 12th and 13th century saying this. And of course, they're going to refer back to late antique stuff. Right. Whether actual Cathar practice was that is harder to say because we don't have the documents from their side. We have them from the confessions Inquisitors got. And so how reliable is that? These are people under pressure, some cases torture. So it's who knows?
Okay. Well, if the feedback for that was so good, is that a good thesis statement? Because that you wrote, because I need to access sort of what it means to write something itself or why.
Right, because a lot of what we've been seeing are stuff written with the idea of spreading it to a wider audience. So if you could say the purpose was secondarily that, but primarily this was a retrospective at the beginning of his clerical career to sort of assess himself as a worthy Christian, right? Yeah, that's a great thesis statement. Yeah.
That just came to me, I guess. I mean, I don't know. Like, I guess I don't really know what's good or not, but
Hey, that's why you ask. That's how you learn. So, all right. Thank you. Thank you for putting all that stuff back, by the way.
Can I also ask if I my thesis statement?
Yes.
This is what I was thinking of doing. Very good. But
No, that is good.
yeah.
So what I would do is narrow it. So what? Okay, friends, experiences.
Yeah, because there's so many things that get kind of laid into it. Because I wanted to talk about the bishop person and then his friends, about the Neoplatonistic stuff like that.
Yeah, and all of those are so important. But I think there's so much material there with any one of those. You should either focus on the philosophical traditions or the people that influenced them. Because the people list is going to be huge. Mom, Ambrose, the various philosophers, Victorinus, right? His example, his friends, right? So that's you're probably beyond 3 pages at that point. And the philosophical issues, I think you could more condense, but it all depends on which one you're more interested in writing about. That's
but I could
probably
pick which one I'm more interested
yeah,
in.
yeah,
I'm more
definitely.
interested in the people aspect of it.
Definitely. So
just tailored to how the different people like changed his Christian faith and then
yes. So even with this, you would just say various factors influenced Augustine's final conversion to Christianity. Among them are these people who influenced him, and then you'll list them in order to signpost it, right? And then in your body, you'll just go through the people, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Maybe we talk about the martyrism, how they devoted themselves, including even until death, just to prove what is a true glorious God.
Mm-hmm.
Week 7, and this one right here.
Questions? Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, and then for cycle B, we have the rewrite by Monday, correct?
Yes. And I still have to grade your original one.
Sorry
So
about
I'll
that.
get that. No. You got that back to me early enough. I should have taken care of. So
It's okay.
I'll get those comments back to you so that can help you with the rewrite. Hopefully today or tomorrow.
Okay.
So yeah.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Wallace.
no problem. Oh no, I think that's somebody's pocket.
Honestly, Mr. Wallace.
You too. See ya.